What's happening, all you dudes and dudettes? This is Dudes Talking Freedom back at you once again. This is Luke.
And I'm Jeremy.
And we want to thank you for joining us on the Dudes Talking Freedom podcast. We're brought to you by Warriors for Freedom, a nonprofit that creates pathways to engage service members to help veterans and their families prevent suicide, foster camaraderie, and help them live their best lives. Check them out at warriorsforfreedom.org. All right, folks, we have Eileen Riverside, a mom and trauma nurse, who is running for Prosper School Board Place 5. And we'll be talking about education, freedom, and whatever else we want to talk about. Let's get into it, shall we?
Eileen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We are pleased to have you here. So
That's a cool dance mix right there.
The 808 kick drum?
I don't know if it's an 808, is it?
No.
I wouldn't know.
I'm just throwing out
Things you've heard.
Yeah, things I've heard. I'm talking jargon that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, we do. We just kind of regurgitate things we've heard sometimes. Pleasure having you here in the studio. Thank you for joining us. As you know, we're always interested in talking to anyone who's running for school board. We're interested in talking to the trustees if they want to come on. Any candidate running for any place, town council, school board, mayor, you name it. We want to talk to everybody. And I think the people in the town of Prosper want to hear from everybody, and they can't always get to a meeting and listen to things firsthand. And so we really appreciate you being here in studio. And obviously we want to talk about why you're running for school board. You want to share your story?
I will. Initially, running for school board wasn't even a thing. I think even through January when they opened all of the applications and everything for school board, it wasn't really my thing. It wasn't anything that I'm just like, oh yeah, let's do this. What ended up happening when I was at the January school board meeting, it went long. Almost all of the school board meetings are at least 4 hours long. And most of the time you're just sitting there because they're in closed session. At the very end of the meeting, the last few minutes, because they came back and then they had 10, 15 minutes that they were speaking and then it adjourned. And that was the meeting. In those last few minutes, there was another lady that had been really supportive of me and my story. And she came up to the little group of us that were sitting there. She wasn't even talking to me. She was talking to somebody next to me. And she's like, I think I'm going to not come to so many of these board meetings because they're not listening to us anyway. They're going to do what they want to do, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I might as well just go home and spend time with my kids. And I'm like, that is so sad.
It's wrong. Is what it is.
How can this be? I mean, how can we go through this and not be heard and just sort of pushed to the side and ignored? Something has to be different. Somebody has to reach out in some way, shape, or form. And at that point, I had already spoken at almost half a dozen meetings, and I'm like, well, if it isn't me, then who? And if it isn't now, then when? Because this is going on right now. And then as soon as the bus scandal happened, you started having more stuff. You had the thing with the teacher, and then right after the January meeting, like a day or two later, you had the thing with Drew. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, well, this doesn't seem to be getting better. So,
yeah. And for those of our listeners and our viewers who are national and not here locally in Prosper, Drew was the president of the school board who was arrested in January for alleged indecency with a minor, and is apparently part of an ongoing police investigation as part of that.
Correct.
And then
it was
resigned
a
the next
16-year-old.
day. Yeah, resigned the next day.
Right, and the teacher, Stacy, I guess her name she had 75,000 followers on Instagram at the time.
Right.
And then she has an OnlyFans account where she is soliciting different sexual performances for individuals online, and teaching our children.
Right.
So,
yeah, a lot of things have been going on in Prosper lately. And, I've heard the stories. I'm going to start going to these school board meetings myself. I coach youth sports, so it can be challenging because I'm, full-time job, doing the podcast, coaching youth sports, a couple nights a week. So my time can, it's tough to get out and get there, and with
6 hour board meeting.
6 hour board meeting. Yeah, I mean, that's.
Do they have a concession stand
ridiculous.
there? It sounds like a football game.
All of it, I wasn't there prior to 6-7 months ago, but they were talking about right before Linker came in, that sometimes in this boardroom, it would be standing room only. They wouldn't put on the air conditioning, or they would turn the heat all the way up. And so they would sweat people out, make people uncomfortable. They were coming around with bottled water, but only for, staff members and not all of the people that are standing there. So that was a little disheartening, but
that's probably by design.
I've only been to one board meeting where they made it way too hot and then they made it way too cold, all in the same meeting.
Really? I got to imagine that's by design. It's probably calculated. Hey, we got a bunch of people here, and we've got some tough topics we want to discuss. So we're gonna, crank up the heat, get these people out of here, or.
But that's just it. They don't actually discuss them in front of you.
Right.
They do that in closed session.
That's what I've
heard.
And
so you're just there waiting.
Yeah, it does seem to be an abuse of the whole process of executive session, what the executive session is really designed for, which is really designed for things that should be private, and most of the things that they're discussing should be debated in front of others, right? The community.
Yeah, that's the whole point of having the school board meeting, with the community there, with their input, with their questioning. I mean, if it's a little too hot because your room is packed full of people, I get that a time or two. But once it continuously happens, then you start questioning the motive behind it, or if there is a motive behind it, as far as the environment and trying to sweat people out. So I don't know exactly the count on the cool, hot,
Well, the point is, I think,
sweating people out, but they're clearly doing tactics where they're going behind closed doors for several hours, and they should be having that discussion out in front of people, handing out waters to select individuals. That seems ridiculous.
And, I mean, anywhere that I've ever been that has a thermostat, you can program it to a certain temperature, and the air conditioning will kick on and off as needed to maintain a certain temperature, regardless of how many people are in the room. And so one would think that they could make that adjustment, understanding that there's a lot of people here. We should probably turn the thermostat down a little bit, make sure that the temperature is
right. So what made you want to go to the school board meetings in the first place? Exactly.
So it was August of last year. It was probably 9 a.m. I got a text message from a lady that lives in my neighborhood. Her son rides the bus with my daughter. And she's like, hey, there's this news article about the bus driver that we had last year. You should read it. I'm like, oh, yay, it's from the Dallas News. I'm not a subscriber. And so that just started a couple hours long search online, and I ended up coming across an article from Texas Scorecard that was, I guess, a synopsis of what that article was. What ended up happening was my daughter's bus driver at 3 months prior had been arrested for molesting 2 children that were 5 and 7 over 100 times on a bus every single morning. And after he was arrested, he jumped off of a balcony. They assured that he wasn't pushed.
Oh, yeah.
He jumped off the balcony, confessed to actually abusing these girls. And then 3 weeks later, he passed from complications of the fall. And so reviewing what they were talking about, sitting down with multiple police officers from 5 different agencies, because I live in Denton County. So you have Denton County, Collin County, Child Advocacy Center, Prosper Police, Prosper ISD Police, and then at one point they were mentioning the Texas Rangers. Oh, wow. So quite a few different entities there.
Yeah. Wow.
And then we got details from the lawyers as well about various activities like, did this happen with your child? Well, yes. Did this happen with your child? Well, yeah. Did this happen with your child? I'm like, oh my heavens. You know, it was a little overwhelming.
Sure, yeah.
I bet.
As any parent would be. To hear that their child was riding on a bus with that monster.
Yeah.
Now, the issue that I had specifically with my daughter, she was the last one off the bus in the evening.
Really?
And there were, I brought part of this because there was another mom who, 2 girls rode the bus. And she was the stop either before mine or after mine because it was never a consistent route. Mm-hmm. And so we went back and forth. School at that time ended at 2:50. And then we make all of these jokes where it's just like, oh, the bus didn't get here until after 4. It's never here until after 4. 4:15, 4:30. Oh, I've never seen the bus go this far north on the app before. Wow. Oh, well, sometimes it glitches. Okay, I've never seen it turn off in the middle of a route before. Oh, well, maybe they went through a dead zone. Maybe he changed his route because of construction, all of these things. And then there was one day in particular.
And when you say maybe, like that's just what your dialogue with your neighbor is all about?
Right. And this was when it was happening. Right. This wasn't after or recalling these events. This was as it was happening. Yeah. That's saved in my phone. But there was one day in particular in February of 2021. Mm-hmm. She got home right before 6 p.m. And, I confronted the bus driver. Yeah. Obviously. And he was just like, oh, well, there was an incident on the bus. They made a mess. I made her stay and clean it up because she made this mess. That's why we're so late. He had every excuse. And it made sense with all of the construction, with all of the trains, with all of, how long the route was. All of it made sense. Yeah. Until you get to this point where you're like, how did I miss all of these signs?
Right. Well, and there was a lot of uproar in the community even prior to that about the buses taking so long. I think even Prosper ISD came out with a newsletter once apologizing for the lateness of some of the buses and how they, because I think enough people maybe complained about the lateness of the buses at one point.
Yeah, the reacclimation after COVID. Yeah. We don't have enough bus drivers. And they're even having problems this year, at the start of the school year this year, with a bunch of different buses, which gives, a monster like Frank adequate smoke screen and cover for him to pull off all of his mistakes.
But also in the court documents, there was a Facebook post that was made in one of the bus driver forums that they knew that something went down with Mr. Frank, and that's actually contributed to our bus shortage this year. And they weren't forthcoming with, this is what happened, everything.
Yeah, I have a friend that lives by an ex-Prosper ISD bus driver, and he ended up quitting this year because of all the heat that he was taking just by being associated with the bus driver group that covers PISD, and he was just like, man, this isn't worth it. I'm not going to be getting called these names and people thinking these terrible thoughts about what I may or may not be doing. Yeah. When clearly I'm not. So he just threw in the towel and quit.
Yeah, it's unfortunate when those the 1 or 2 bad apples spoils the bunch, as they say, right? And it gets to this point where people are like, hey, look, I don't want to be associated with this at all because it's just not something that I'd want to be involved in. I don't want my name dragged through the mud. I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to be associated with the stigma of the bus drivers in Prosper because...
Yeah, well, it's fight or flight, right? When people are unsure what to do, their instincts kick in. Yeah. And his was to flight, and Eileen's was to fight, and tell us about your first time where you came up and spoke at a board meeting.
I just about cried. I didn't know the process. I didn't know how to do anything. I showed up and I'm just like, I'd like to speak. And they're like, we closed speaking already. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I came across another mom who knew who I was from my daughter's class, and her name was Candace. And she's like, oh no, honey, your child was on that bus. You take my time. And walked up, and she changed from her name to my name. And that was the very first time I stood up with the little shaky paper. And I'm like, my name is Eileen, where I actually had to read my name on the paper.
It must have taken an incredible amount of courage. Good for you.
It was nerve-wracking, but as time has gone on and nothing's really been acknowledged or changed, it's gotten easier. And so, yeah.
And how many times total have you been up standing in front of the school board now?
I believe 5.
Yeah, 5 times. Yeah,
but it's between the school board and, other people that want to know and are curious, and then other agencies and news networks and things that want to do interviews, and they also want to know because they want to know what happened.
Yeah, because secrecy is not adequate in public school, right? And you've done interviews with a number of different TV networks,
yes.
Right? Who all of you spoke with already?
I was on ABC, NBC, and Telemundo. They're the same entity. Right. CBS, and I had an article from Lauren Prisbel from Fox 4.
Okay.
And I was also mentioned on the Texas Scorecard.
And that's Have You Had a Good Day lately?
It is.
Oh, okay. I thought I recognized
it. Was a good day talking to Lauren.
Yeah? She seems like a really nice lady. Oh, wow. Yeah. That's a lot to handle. And now it all culminates to School Board Place 5, right?
Obviously, the district is, been plagued with some issues. What other issues do you think are facing the district?
Well, my husband is a teacher at one of the high schools. He's in science.
God bless him.
And so I know he comes home and he talks about various things. Mm-hmm. I know that literacy is an issue, even up to the high school level. Support is an issue. When he, has students that are struggling, parents that don't seem to care, admin that's just make it happen. I know he's brought up a couple of different issues that I started writing down. I know I even took a picture and I sent it to my husband at one of the board meetings. And I think you mentioned it with Amy, where the literacy rate is, 60%. And that's for the smaller children. I know, at least on the AP exams, even for science and math, a lot of times you still have to do essay questions that you handwrite out how to solve certain math problems. Mm-hmm. And when the literacy is lacking, then that makes it really difficult to articulate the answer that you would actually pass it, because you can write down the answer. This is the answer. Well, you're right, but you didn't say how you got to that answer and make sure that the formulas are correct, that this is correct, and you didn't plug it into a calculator and be like, there.
Yeah, literacy has a cascading effect to all other disciplines, right? It's if you can't read and or you can't write well enough for grade level at a minimum, you're going to have a challenge answering questions in any subject, whether it's science, social studies, math. You're going to have that problem. And I've definitely seen here and there with my own kids where they've had a few issues when they answer the questions or they don't answer the questions the right way, or they score bad on a school assignment and then they come home and we talk to them, well, why'd you score bad on this, and then why didn't you answer this question the right way? And they're like, and they don't know. And the teachers do a great job in trying to encourage them along, right? But sadly, the teachers are constrained to the curriculum and the scoring rubric and so forth that is put forth for them. And those challenges, you mentioned the parents, right? I think that personally, my opinion is parents need to take a much more active role in helping their kids rather than just kids come home, bury themselves in their room with an iPad or a phone, texting with their friends, FaceTiming with their girlfriend, doing whatever, not paying attention, and there's not a lot of homework. So there's not a lot of reinforcement. And then you mentioned math. We've talked about this before too. What's your take on Google Classroom and using machines in class versus good old penmanship and writing and
I mean, especially for math, handwriting, with you, the hand-eye coordination, plus with the memorization and remembering everything is very useful. Mm-hmm. That's hard to do on a computer.
Yeah.
Now, I know that we do have like touch pads and things where you can actually like write it out with your finger. Mm-hmm. Still different. Yeah, I know that in some way the Google Classroom is kind of like a necessary evil because it makes it easier for grading and following up and everything like that. But at the same time, it doesn't replace writing. And I do think that we have it too much in our classroom. I know for my daughter who's in second, she told me that she spends the majority of the day on this computer. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, well, okay.
Yeah.
There's not much I can do for that at this point.
Right.
I mean, I would love to make it more structured time-wise, where it's just like, okay, well, we have this time for the computer, and we have this time for typing, and we have this time for, to make it structured like that, mm-hmm. versus, well, you're going to work on what you're going to work on, and I'll be over here.
Yeah.
But you brought up something earlier that my husband mentioned. So we have something in Prosper called the Curriculum and Instructional Department.
Okay.
And they're in charge of creating and pushing two different things. One of them is process skills, and the other one is concept knowledge. And so they're currently really pushing process skills. And so he gave me like this math problem, and it went completely over my head. Math is not my strong suit. That's why I married that teacher. But the way that I brought it back to nursing, because that's what I'm more familiar with, you go to the hospital, you have viral pneumonia. Most people know what pneumonia is. Mm-hmm. So you go there and you get a script. It's Augmentin. Okay. And so, the process skill there is you have a prescription for Augmentin. Here it is. Take it. And I'll scan it in the machine or whatever. That's a process skill. Very, very simple one.
Yeah.
All right. I gave you Augmentin. Do you know what that is?
Me? No idea.
It's an antibiotic.
Okay.
I just told you have viral pneumonia.
So that's not going to
So
work.
I gave you an antibiotic for viral pneumonia. And I didn't bother to ask you if you were allergic to penicillin.
Ooh, I would be dead because I am allergic to penicillin.
And so that's
Thanks,
the concept.
You just killed me.
You should have known this.
But there was a point to your death.
Some people might be okay with that. But
I'm just saying, you have the process skill of this is a medication. Like I can spike an IV bag. I can start an IV. Those are process skills.
Yeah.
But why am I giving you fluids? Why do I have to flush out your kidneys? Why am I doing all of this? Well, the medication's clear through your kidneys. Well, you have to have that concept knowledge to do that.
Right.
But if you're pushing process skills, you are graduating students that are just like, all right, I take this formula, I plug this in, this is the answer. Well, what do you do with that answer? This is the answer. What do you do with the answer?
If robotics and AI are a big part of our future, and we're being led to believe that they are, then process skills are going to become, more and more irrelevant for humans to have. And concept skills will be like the vast majority of what humans will be thinking about, because the robots will be able to do processes so much quicker and more efficiently.
Yeah.
So I don't really see the logic in that, balance between the two. So, yeah.
But I mean, you have to have both, because if I sit there and, it's just like give this antibiotic and I'm like, I don't know how to program this machine.
Sure.
And it doesn't do any good.
Right.
So
yeah,
you do
that's
have
why
to
you
have
gotta
both.
the right balance, right?
Right.
You got to have an overwhelming or a majority of it on concept, but you have to have a grasp of the processes in order to understand the concepts, really. Mm-hmm. They're building blocks of concepts, right? It's kind of like the maestro and being able to play one instrument, right?
Now, the other thing I thought was really interesting are final exams. You have a child in high school. So what do you know about final exams and where they come from? What do you expect to see on a final exam?
A grade of a B or an A.
Well, what is the final exam testing?
The subject at hand, right? If it's a math class, I expect there to be math problems pursuant to that particular subject. If it's calculus, or if it's algebra, or if it's trigonometry.
Yeah, your understanding of the entire year's lesson plans.
The entire year's lesson plans. The final exam is created before the first day of school, agreed upon by all of the different departments from the two high schools. I guess it's 2 right now, not 3.
Yeah,
Right.
Soon to be 3, yeah.
Because I know, at least in my husband's classroom, he has a lab-based classroom. All of the lab equipment that my husband has, he owns the vast majority of it, which means that the other high school doesn't have it. So you're creating an exam that everyone in his department across the different schools agrees on before the first day of school. So it is not a cumulative exam of what they learned during the entire year. Yeah. And not only that, it isn't a test per se. It's more like an experiment. So, I mean, it's not even very long either. And my husband's just like, you could do this. If you have any basic knowledge, you can do it on the first day, get an 85. And then parents would say, why is my kid failing your class when they got an 85 on the final? It's like, well, the final didn't test what they learned in my class.
Oh, man.
It's a shell game, man. It's a shell game in every aspect of what's going on in PISD. It's a shell game with regards to the investigation on the bus. It's a shell game with the concept versus processes, the final exam. It's a shell game even with the STAR tests, because they change every year. They're different all the time, and meets grade level is only a 60%, and mastery at sometimes is only even an 80%. So I just don't understand. They're changing everything all the time in order to spin the narrative, or completely conceal the narrative in order for them to maintain this image, rather than focusing on getting children ready for a higher learning or vocation or profession, their futures. So it's a real tragedy what's happening in every facet of our independent school district, really. And I think that's kind of why we're, so passionate about talking to school board candidates and trustees, and we know big change starts
Parents,
locally.
Yeah. I mean, as I've said many times before, I don't necessarily have a problem with, I don't have a problem at all, actually, with teachers, because teachers are a product of the system itself, right? The teachers, again, are teaching a curriculum, right? They are bound by, they're in a box, right? Like, here's the box. You have to teach the kids within this box. Now they can kind of color outside the lines and get creative and, come up with ways to kind of educate the kids. But generally, the children have to follow a certain curriculum put forth by the TEA, or in part by sometimes the NEA or whatever else. But the education system has been created by certain agencies or associations. And here in Prosper, they are, as far as I know, bound by some of those policies that are put forth by these associations. They don't come up with their own curriculum. They have a general curriculum that gets put forth, throughout the state of Texas, and that, the STAR and all that stuff. Right. But what I do take exception to, which I have also said before, and I'd love your opinion on this, is when my daughter comes home from school and says she doesn't care if she scores, she doesn't need to do extra work to kind of get ready for a test or quiz or whatever, because she, if she doesn't get better than a 70, she'll just get to take it again and score up to an 85. And I'm thinking to myself, if you score a 60, that's a D, and that's it. Like, I don't, I don't think you should get another chance. I think you should do your best the first time, and you should take it seriously out of the gates. What's your take on that?
I know that it gets a little bit worse, because I know that at least through the school board, they have a policy that you're not supposed to be able to enforce like minimum grades when students don't turn in work and things like that. You're supposed to give them the 0. That is our policy.
Mm-hmm.
But admin comes down and says, but they're a sports player. But they're top of this. And so they are letting some of it slide and kind of pushing it. And it's just like, do we follow this or do we not?
It's like the movie The Program.
Right.
Because I know the idea, like I understand the idea behind minimum grades, which is if you get a flat out 0 on like a big assignment because you were sick, because you were at a band competition or something, you were gone all week, and you didn't do it. That's as simple as it is. You didn't do it. It is so hard to come back from a 0 on a large test or project. And that's why they instituted it, to make it a little easier on that student. But at the same time, it's like, what are we learning? We're doing this accountability thing again.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like school has to be your number one priority.
Yeah.
There has to be consequences, right? And yeah, a 0 is terrible. I mean, if you get a 1-star rating on your Yelp review, right? Like it takes like 10 5-star ratings just to get it back, right? So
yeah,
it is very painful to get a 0, but also you could have done the homework. You probably had weeks or sometimes months, or their grade, right? Like their grade. They could have done something other than a 0.
Yeah.
If it's a multiple choice, they could have just flipped the coin and surely they would have got 25% or something.
Yeah, you would think.
But now I know that we're like focusing on all the negative and things that have to be changed and everything.
Right.
But some of the stuff that we're not looking at, it's not all bad.
No, of course it's not all bad.
No.
But there's enough bad that there needs to be change.
Right.
Right.
But at the same time, when you heap on all of like the pain and the negativity and all of that, you're like weighing down all these people and like, oh gosh, how are we ever going to get out of this? This is just awful. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be that way, because we can look at it and we're at 60%. The state average is 49. So we are doing better. We have scores from like 2019. I think we were at like 60 something %. And then in 2021, through the like 2020 mess, it dropped. It was like in the 40s and 50s. Yeah. But then in 2022, it's right back into like the 60s and everything. So we are making that comeback. It probably takes time. It takes process. You now have these kids that have like this year and a half gap that we're trying to overcome, but we are slowly. And so there are many things that we do well. We'll always have problems to address, but we can't let that overshadow everything.
No.
Because the other thing that I think is really cool, now this isn't necessarily for Prosper, but I'm on the college, Calling College Medical Advanced Practice Board. Okay. And so we go through the curriculum. And so we just got accredited like last year. And we have this program at Plano High School. And the program is phenomenal. When they graduate from this program, they have 4 different certifications that they could take to an employer, hospital, clinic, or whatnot and do. Like EKG, nice. Medical scribe. Not only that, they're, a certified medical assistant. And this is one program. Prosper offers like auto mechanics. Their chef kitchen is amazing.
That's awesome.
Nursing's the number one profession in demand right now. So that's
It has
fantastic.
been for a long time.
Yeah. Right. It has, but it is currently still, right?
They didn't
But,
do any
I mean-
favors when they fired a lot of them, but
I know that when you're looking at college readiness and all of that, you're going to have students that hit 3 different levels. You have them where, I wrote it down somewhere. You have them where they're going to go for like a trade degree. And I mean, they can finish high school and already be in that trade and just be done and get into that trade and start working and
Good.
building up the
Great.
time and money and all of that.
Yeah.
Then you have people that can go for like an apprenticeship where you have just enough knowledge to kind of get your foot in the door there and then start from there and do your apprenticeship and work your way up. And then you have the people that are in all of the AP programs that are college bound, that are going to go on and go into like PhDs and research and all of that. So we are trying to reach children in 3 different tiers, and we are preparing them in these 3 different ways. It's just trying to find the balance working out our problems, and then, you know, acknowledging what we're doing well as well.
Right. Prosper does an extraordinary job. I mean, they're head and shoulders above most school districts as far as, especially their curriculum, what they offer, and the electives. I mean, the amount of electives, which is basically what you're saying, that Prosper ISD offers is just unheard of. I'm just astounded. They have like a barbecue elective, right? Like that's
team.
incredible.
They even have a team
outdoor
that goes and
education.
like competes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. They have outdoor education. My son loves outdoor education. He thinks it's a great class, and they you know, that's a lot of those classes I hear, and I'm like, wow, that's
And
that's
agriculture
really cool that
and
they have
farming seems to be like a big Texas thing. I heard that, I think it's the University of Texas, that they actually in every single county have like a plot of land for research for agricultural purposes.
That's awesome.
It's cool.
Yeah.
And Texas is huge. That's a
Yeah.
lot to
a lot of
research
land.
and look at.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
It
a
is.
lot. Yeah. And they're all different climates too, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and depending on what time of day it is, you know, it could be 20 degrees at 8 a.m. and then that afternoon it could be 100.
Yeah.
Or like today where it's like 90. I think it officially reached 90 in DFW. Wow. And it was what, 50 just a few days ago.
I know. Yeah.
And then,
Seems like just yesterday we had frozen pipes,
and the storm Olive is coming, right? So the winter storm Olive.
and it's going to hit the whole country. I'm hearing, right?
Right.
West Coast, East Coast.
Yeah.
Yes, it should be fun.
So we'll see.
All of
Who
those
knows?
feelings of that February a couple of years ago are coming back.
Man, it's crazy.
It was a treacherous
But I just
week.
know, I think a lot of people associate me with, when they see me at board meetings, I'm pretty emotional. And I don't want them to associate me necessarily with, oh, the district is so bad and evil. And it's like, no, it's acknowledging problems.
Right.
That is a necessary life skill, that we acknowledge, hey, this is a problem. Let's write down what the problem is. Let's troubleshoot different things that we can try to remedy this problem. And let's come back stronger than we were. Now we're having these problems. Okay, cool. We're having these problems. Let's acknowledge them and move on and work our way through it. Not ignore it, not sweep it under the rug, but actually to move forward and be like the comeback district where it's like, look at all these things that happened, but look how amazing they are now.
Yeah.
When one of my kids does something wrong or does something to their sibling, right? Like I'm like, hey, tell him you're sorry and tell him why you're sorry. And then let's move on, you know, let's give each other hugs and let's move on. And that's pretty much all the Prosper ISD that you're looking for, essentially. Like, I'm
Right.
sorry, this is what we're gonna do going forward, and let's move on. Let's just move on with our lives.
Because at those board meetings, you can feel the divisiveness where it's just like they're wearing all these like Pro Holly t-shirts. And then you have these people that are kind of like off to the side where they're just like, well, but you know, I have this concern about books. I have this concern about SPED. I have this concern about the bus driver. And then you have all these other people. It's like, how dare you?
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, no, everybody deserves to be heard.
Yeah.
And this January board meeting was intimidating, to say the least, because you go into this board meeting and they introduce it with, you know, a prayer. And then they have this choir of high school students who were amazing, but they sang like a Beatles song. And it's like, okay. And then because Holly's contract was on the agenda, you had a dozen so people stand up and be like, we really need to keep Holly. She's amazing. All of this, all of this, all of this. And then you had the mayor of Prosper stand up, give a declaration to make January School Board Trustee Appreciation Month. And then you had maybe 5 people that stood up and they're just like, well, I have this issue with the books. I have this issue with, we haven't heard anything about this investigation. And then they go into a closed session for 3 hours. And then they come back and they're like, we're extending Holly's contract. She got like a $60,000 bonus and have a good night. And it's
dog and pony show, man behind the curtain.
Yeah. The biggest issue that I have is that's intimidating. You have all these people that probably want to say something, but they're not going to listen. They're not going to hear me, what I have to say, or I'm going to be kind of like bullied almost out of this. Yeah. And that's just not the way it should be.
And it doesn't send a very good message to the community.
Because the idea isn't that we're necessarily anti-Holly, anything like that. It's, you have to make it make sense. You have somebody that's the subject of a lawsuit getting raises. And I mean, did we really have to extend her contract? It was already through 2027. That was already there. Right. We extended it through 2028.
And she's being declined to other jobs that she's applying for. She is not getting those jobs.
I mean, it's almost like a slap in the face to the community. It's like, why even have that be a consideration if she's already under contract to 27?
Right.
Why even bother having the discussion?
It seemed really weird. Like, I get there are a lot of people. She was a principal here. I think she was a teacher here. Yeah. But she is incredibly nice. She really is.
I'm sure.
And there are so many teachers that love her support. I mean, if she goes and writes on whiteboard, she sends emails, she knows everyone's name. That's impressive.
That goes a long way with voters.
They call they call that politics.
That's a wonderful thing. But at the same time, I mean, there's no information that's out.
Right.
Like, if I was in any other school district, it's like, you're under official investigation here. They'll be like, okay, well, we're going to put you in a little timeout. We're going to work through this, and then you can come on back. We'll maybe put like this plan in place to go over like your yearly review or whatnot. None of that happened.
Yeah, no, it just seems like
it just seems so odd.
Yeah, you said it.
Because it isn't against Holly, because she is a wonderful person. But wonderful people still make mistakes. The problem is you have to acknowledge there was a mistake, and then you work your way through it. And then you come back and be like, we did this. We made it.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people are just looking for that transparency. And I know transparency is this big buzzword, and like people get in an uproar when you say, hey, we want transparency. But like, that's really what people want. When you go in a closed session for 3+ hours in almost every meeting back to back to back every month, and then you just come out and say, hey, here's what's going on, and no one has any clue how you arrived at such a decision, there's a concern there. And people feel like, when people are getting grilled on Capitol Hill, like that's all out in the open on C-SPAN. Like you can see that stuff, you can watch that. You can see the video, you can see the footage. You can go watch it online, or you can watch it on TV. And then when they go into executive session, they go into executive session because there's some really privileged information that they can't let the public know. And that can be, if it's top secret, or there's some sort of like, hey, there are aliens or there aren't, that kind of thing. Like, I get it, but this is a freaking school board. Like it's like a local town school board. This isn't like Capitol Hill in DC, where there's like, national security is like a thing. You know what I mean? Like, again, if as long as they're not discussing a student's name, which I can't imagine they would be in these, like, I don't see there any reason why they would be in some of these recent meetings, especially when you're talking about extending a superintendent's contract for a year and giving them a $60,000 bonus. when there's an uproar in the town about what's going on in a lot of different areas. It just reeks of, you know, nepotism is not the right word, but it's like that real tight knit, like, this is our crew, and we're
cabal.
Yeah, we're not gonna let people see behind the curtain. Like, we're gonna do our thing, and if you want to, and to the people of Prosper, like, if you want change, you got to get your asses out and you got to vote on May 6th. You got to vote for change.
Just a small percentage of people vote. I mean, what is it, like 5%, 4%?
I think it was between 5 and 8.
Yeah,
not enough.
And they just want an apology too. You know, I mean, even my daughter loves The Grinch. She's 3 years old, and the policeman comes out at the very end, and the Grinch basically apologizes, and the mayor's like, "No, let's destroy his life. Let's throw him off, you know, the ledge, whatever." And the policeman's like, "Well, he apologized. It's probably okay. It's great, you know."
And then he went to the party.
Right? Yeah, he went to the party, and that's it. Just apologize and let's move forward. But just to change the direction here with this conversation is that, are there any other school board trustees that you know of, or candidates that you know of, who are married to another teacher, or are married to a teacher, not another teacher, but are married to a teacher?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? So, I mean, that is a very unique perspective that
Absolutely.
you can offer the school board in, you know, in a good, healthy relationship, marriage, you know. I mean, there's a really good exchange of thoughts and ideas most of the time during that. And I think that's really cool what you're going to bring to place 5 should you be elected. Should we be able to talk, you know, another 10% of voters to get off their couches, their keisters, and throw a vote in. You know, it takes like 5-10 minutes. It's real simple. You know, you get a free sticker. You know, It's your civic duty. Do it. Just get out there and vote. I don't care who you're voting for.
Yeah, people get up and they vote. You know, in the general election, they vote. You know,
I want to be a part of a community that cares about their community. And if you're not voting, you don't care. And that's the single biggest metric to a community that cares.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, if only 5% of people are voting, that's a problem.
Well, it's basically the appointment that nobody else wanted. Because we had like a couple people in that meeting that are just like, you know, we should have an appointment. But then you had petitions and more people that are just like, no, this should be elected. But then when nobody comes out and votes, then it's basically an appointment.
Yeah. It's like the same. It's like that's another slap in the face, the appointment thing. It's like, you know, it's almost like they just aren't. They're definitely hearing the people.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you hear the people and then you don't act on that, or you act in opposition to that, it's kind of like a slap in the face. It's like, yeah, we heard you, but we just don't care because we know best.
Cronyism.
You know?
But
yeah.
There is a point I do want to come back to.
Go for it.
You know, I am the wife of a teacher in the district currently. I had a couple parents that came up to me and they're like, "You can't be on the school board. What are you going to do without your husband? We need your husband as a teacher. How could you take another teacher away?" And I'm just like, that's a good point. And so I actually looked up and I did a little video on it on my Facebook that even as a school board employee, because my husband has been employed for longer than 6 months prior to the election, that I would be allowed to be on the school board. It doesn't affect him at all.
Good.
The only thing that I would have to step down from would be if it involved him personally by name.
Okay.
Not just like group of teachers.
Good
I can
to know.
vote on group of teacher things, but I can't be like, you know, he got in trouble because he did blah, blah, blah. What are we going to do about him? And it's just like, oh, yeah, no, you can handle him.
Yeah. Let's have our lawyers investigate it.
You'll never hear the end of it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you did that research.
Yeah. Seriously,
I wouldn't have
because
even
you don't
thought
get
about
paid
it.
anything to be a school board trustee,
That's
right?
volunteer.
Like
Right.
it's just volunteer work. So
Yeah.
I don't know, unless you're just independently wealthy, you probably require
I'm a part-time nurse and my husband's teacher.
a school teacher out of the good of his heart, you know, like he won the lotto, obviously. and just loves going
I have
to
to
school and
admit,
teach.
the subject that he teaches was the only subject in high school I ever failed.
Oh,
Is that right?
That's right.
Oh, wow.
But he wasn't my teacher. And we'll put that out there. He
There
was
you
not
go.
my teacher.
That's good to know. That's
We
good
have
to
a
know.
ton of great
This is in
teachers
Florida.
in Prosper. Every teacher that my kids have had in Prosper ISD have been absolutely phenomenal.
Same.
All my kids love every single one of their teachers.
Same.
I haven't ever had a bad experience with a teacher and any of the students that I am in guardian over.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
So,
I mean, couple teachers. I've never had an issue. We've always really liked all of our kids' teachers. We think they're all great. I did have an issue once where my youngest son, when he was in first grade, and I think I've actually mentioned this on the show before, he brought home this book from the library, and it was about, and again, he's in first grade, and it was around Halloween time, and you get to pick out a book to bring home, and it's spooky, scary. And it was like about the Amityville murders and like a couple of other like suspect subjects. And I looked at the book and I like said to my wife, I'm like, they let him take this book. Like, first of all, this book I think is a little bit inappropriate for elementary school. But then I said, they actually let him check this book out. He's in first grade, and they're talking about like, an entire family that got murdered in Amityville. I mean, I think that was a little bit inappropriate, and so I didn't let him read it. I took it from him, and again, like we go back to the beginning of the show where we talked about parents taking an active, role in what their children are doing when they come home from school. If you've got content that you bring home, you look at it. We always look at the assignments our kids come home with, the stuff they do in class, so we can check and see how they do and. How are they answering the questions? Are there areas where we need to like work on with them, at home? But sadly, I don't think enough parents are doing that. And it's like, if only 5% of the people in the town are actually voting in a school board election, then I don't know what the percentage of parents are that are taking an active role in their kids' education when they leave.
The number one indicator of children's academic and professional success is if they were read to by their parents when they were children. And, I read that somewhere, and we've done it every night. I'm like, I'll be damned if I miss a night.
Well, I know the Richardson Public Library actually has a program that's 1,000 books before kindergarten.
Really?
And so they actually have the research that shows that when you read 1,000 books before kindergarten, your child is more likely to be successful in reading and literacy. And at the end of that, I think it's 200, they put your little train picture up on the window because you're staying on track.
I love it.
That is great.
And at the end of the 1,000 books, they give you a book.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that is
But
cool.
I live in Freshwater District 10, and so it's interesting that we have all these groups of students that actually don't have access to the Prosper Library. You have to pay for that. You have to pay for that, and you have to pay for Frisco. But I belong to the Little Elm Library and the Salina Library because anybody can belong to them.
That's good.
Well, the Salina Library is about to explode, I'm sure. And I don't know what
It
the
is.
Little
And the
Elm
Frisco
is, but-
Library just had a soft opening for their brand new facility.
Really? That's too bad that Prosper doesn't offer access to.
Why is that?
They do if you pay.
But why? Like,
But it's just like if you're part of
squeeze.
the ISD, you should be able to have access to that. But that's up to
if you're a
the
resident,
city of
you
Prosper.
should, what's
It's a
the fee? Do you know off the top of your head?
I want to say it's like $50 to $100
It doesn't
Per
matter
person,
what it
per
is.
year?
per year. Yeah, per card.
Squeeze.
That's way too much, but it doesn't matter what it is. It should definitely be zero.
I pay
They should give
taxes.
it To
Well, but I think the
every
idea
parent.
is if you live in the Freshwater District, you don't pay taxes to the
Yeah,
library.
Yeah, true.
But at the same time, I don't pay taxes to Salina per se, and
Yeah, but you
I
can
have a
go in
Salina
there.
card.
The overwhelming majority of your taxes go to the schools, though, right? So,
Indeed.
Seems like enough, but whatever.
My husband told me that we pay more taxes than Winsong.
Really?
Okay.
Huh. Interesting. And where you live?
Artesia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Freshwater District number 10.
Elmridge. We renamed it like twice.
I was going to say, I keep hearing
Elmridge.
new things. It's like, now it's called this.
Oh, it was Freshwater District 10 first, but Freshwater District 10 also covers like Savannah, which I'm not sure if they go to Prosper. And there's a couple different properties in Prosper that they cover.
Prosperities.
I think you just came up with a legit new name.
I like that.
That's because I can't enunciate.
So are there 9 other freshwater districts, though?
There's a whole bunch.
Really?
I don't know how many are actually in Prosper. I want to say there's at least 3.
Really? Oh.
But then, Artesia has like 1,500 houses or so. And so that's potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of children that are affected.
We have lots of friends over in Artesia. Love the community. It's a really cool, nice community. They just have their own
Unless you
water
want to
tower.
go swimming.
Oh, right.
Unless the power goes out and then the water tower is that's all their water. They don't pull
Oh, they're
from
getting ready
Prosper.
to redo all of
Are
our
they?
water.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing during that winter storm a couple of years ago, they were getting a little nervous that they were going to run out of water.
We did run out of water.
Did you?
We did.
Oh, my goodness.
Scary.
Sorry.
So how are you going to get elected? What's your plan? Do you have a plan of action of like what steps are you going to knock on 10,000 doors?
Yeah, tell us
You're
about
gonna
I don't
strategy.
have as big of a team as Amy does.
Right.
Like all the more power to her. I mean, that's amazing.
She does have quite a team.
She does.
Quite a backing.
I know that I'm trying to create like a Facebook, social media presence.
So Facebook.com/Riverside Place 5
Yes.
is your, okay, for those listening.
So I have that. I ordered some signs that are supposed to be in this week. So I'm super excited for that.
Nice.
I know that I have other like news networks and things that are reaching out that want to do it closer to election time. And so I'll be meeting with them as well.
Awesome.
Great.
So I know that I do plan on knocking on doors, but I probably will have at least a child or 2 in tow with me.
That's okay.
So it definitely has to be a nice day.
Yeah.
But I know that you actually calculated how many doors there are in Prosper.
That's right. I did. I don't remember.
7,000? Was it 7,000?
I guess
no,
the only
No. It was
I think it was 15.
15, I think it was.
the only thing I
something
worried
like
about
that.
is, driving around, you see the gated communities.
You can't get in.
And it's just like, to hop the fence or not to hop the fence. Oh, we probably shouldn't do that because that would not look good.
Yeah. Those are
You
people
piggyback.
that probably,
Piggyback on somebody else's car.
those folks probably aren't voting.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's probably like you want to go to the denser areas, obviously, because the denser areas is going to be more homes, and a lot of those gated communities may not have as many homes in them. I would imagine generally compared to like
their
an open
concerns
community.
and everything matter too.
I agree. I'm just saying they clearly want people not to come in. So I
Rich
wouldn't waste
people
your
matter.
time thinking about it. You know what I mean?
funny.
Go to the open.
I was supposed to say you say that, and then the lagoon's like right there.
Yeah. No, it's a giant swimming pool
So what?
with the sandbox attached to it.
Can you just you want to summarize your platform for us?
Well, I'm working really hard on acknowledging issues because until we reach out to the parents, we might not even know what all of the issues are. Like we get some of the squeaky wheels that come to the board meetings, and I know that sometimes it's like, we've heard this before, and it kind of gets brushed aside. But we have parents with concerns, and we should know what they are because that's how you make the plan to go forward. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really big on learning what the issues are. I'm really big on transparency, where it's like, okay, we learned what these issues are. Let's crumple in a little ball and throw it away.
There's that word again, transparency.
Yes, we have
That easy.
to let people know what the plan is, because people that have the issues can be like, this would make a good plan or start of a plan or whatnot, because they can help you.
Right.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can, it builds community. It builds unity because we're working together. Parents are part of the process. Families are part of the process. Children are part of the process with teachers, administrators, and making it all work together. Because, one parent might handle it this way, one parent might handle it this way. And then, okay, well, we can create this different framework where we'll find what works best.
Well, what is your strategy on how to make things better? on the school board? What plans are you going to come up with?
I know that it might be difficult. I know that I've faced off with the board. I guess there's not really a better way to say that.
Right. Yeah.
'Cause I know a lot of times the board seems very united. I know that's a TASB thing, that you want to present a united front because you want to be strong. Mm-hmm. But that's not always the right answer. Because sometimes we do have to talk it out. That's the whole point of problem solving. That's the whole point of the board, is to talk it out, find these problems, and then, maybe you're split. But the idea is there's more than one answer. We're going to find the one that works for the district, not just everybody agrees 100% of the time.
Right. That's a great plan, Let everybody's voice be heard and transparency.
Because I know that things probably won't happen immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, it just won't.
Well, it's going to take people, it's going to take non-establishment
you'll start
board
seeing
members, right?
the differences. It might look split at first, but then there'll be more discussion, more transparency, and you'll start to see what we're working through, the different sides and the different facets of issues. Mm-hmm. And then we can start working towards, this is what we think will work best. And then we can come united and say, this is what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think you said it. I mean, without change, you're going to just have the same old. It's going to be that same united front, putting up a wall, protecting, themselves, their seats, for good, bad, or indifferent, protecting Holly. There's only going to, if the people want something different, the people need to vote in something different. And otherwise, it's going to be the same thing over and over again. And, I've made the argument before that someone stood up at the last school board meeting, I believe it was a teacher, and spoke about how, they were for an appointment to replace Drew, the president, the disgraced president that had to step down. And, all due respect to that particular teacher, but Prosper is a different town than it was 4 years ago. There are probably maybe twice as many people here as there were 4 years ago. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's exponentially growing, and people that are now paying attention to this, the issues, and again, it's not all bad, but there are issues, and people are paying attention to those issues, and people want something different. They want to see different results. They want to see things change. And if the vote keeps going 5-1, 6-1, et cetera, nothing's ever going to change. It's going to be the same thing over and over and over again. And so you can sit there and you can say it's okay because I trust all of these people that I voted for, 2, 3, 4 years ago. Well, a lot of the people that are in the town now didn't have an opportunity to vote 3 years ago, right? For the seats that are now up for re-election. They weren't here 3 years ago. They weren't here 2 years ago, right? They just moved here in the last year.
We get people that come in pretty much every day.
Every day. And I think the more people that are paying attention, and this goes for the whole country. This is not just a Prosper thing. You're seeing it all over the country. It is a systemic problem across the country. You're seeing people standing up at school board meetings and, addressing the issues, speaking out, saying, here are the problems that we see. Here's what we don't like. And in some cases, they're affecting change. And if people in Prosper want to affect change, they need to get out, they need to vote, they need to understand the issues, they need to understand who the school board candidates are. Thank you again for coming on. They need to.
Well, thank you for responding to me.
Yes, no, I mean, we made a public statement on Facebook, and we said, hey, listen, like anyone who wants to come on and talk about their platform, we are more than happy to have them in the studio and to have a conversation, whether it's a trustee or a candidate.
Yeah, but you better get on quick because spots are filling up.
Yeah.
And we're talking to people from different school districts. our school district.
Yeah.
I had somebody say that you're going to be talking to somebody from McKinney.
We are. We've got someone coming on from McKinney soon, and so I mean, more and more people are reaching out saying they want to talk about their platform. They want to get the word out there, and I think it's great. You know, I mean, that's why we do this. It's one of the reasons we started this thing is to bring attention to the issues. Not just like it never started off as a Prosper thing. It started off as a hey, there's some messed up things going on in the world, and we were just a bunch of dudes that wanted to hang out, drink a couple beers, and shoot the shit, you know?
Yeah.
And excuse my French. And now, you know, it's the two of us, and we still like want to do that, but there are some local issues as well that people want to hear about, want to talk about, and we kind of fell into it, and so here we are, and fighting the fight, and helping people get the word out. So
Yeah. So, anything else you want to add, Eileen?
closing statement, if you
Closing
will.
statement here.
Why should people vote for you?
Yeah.
Because I'm a mom.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that because I think Amy's a mom too.
Yeah.
But she's running for
She's
two.
on for that. Yeah,
So,
that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess my biggest fight is that I've already gone and faced off with the board. I wasn't afraid to stand up. I was terrified to stand up to them, but I did it. And it's something that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, I'm not really afraid to do that. And I've done it. So I have like the tiniest little experience with that. But I basically want everyone to be heard. When we go back to back at Rucker, they had the protest. That's the word I'm looking for. They had the protest, and you had all of these parents out there with a sniper pointed at them.
Yeah.
And then you want them to come forward and speak at board meetings. And it's like...
Wait, they had a sniper pointed at
Yeah,
them?
there was a protest outside the school building, and there was a car wash. Was it a car wash
Yes,
across the street?
across the street.
That actually had a sniper on top of the roof.
Just in case.
Just making sure none of the protesters got unruly. And as a group of parents.
It's a group mostly of moms because it was during the school day in the middle of the day. And they were only out there for like 2 hours with little signs that are like, please listen to us. But then you have language barriers because, you know, my daughter's in the Spanish immersion program. And even when you go to the school, some of the not administrative staff, but, you know, you have your bus drivers and custodial staff and teachers' aides and stuff like that. And some of them aren't hugely fluent in English. And I can only imagine, like, I'm having this problem. I can't address the board. What am I going to say? They're going to look at me and think I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
And it's like, that shouldn't be a concern.
You're right.
We have translators, we have recordings, we have people that speak Spanish as well.
Yeah.
There's no reason. You can go up there and speak Korean and somebody can record it and be like, I see your concern.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be afraid
If the
to stand
governor
forward.
of a state can stand up there with a translator and a sign language person and all those other things, then, you know, I mean, I
And
would
we
imagine
shouldn't
we
point
could do it
snipers
locally.
at them.
No, that's weird.
Yeah, that was really weird. And I don't know who.
Maybe having undercover,
It was-
like walking around, but like having a sniper on a roof.
I heard
is
that it
a
was the
little bit much.
business owner that was protecting their business. But I don't know.
Do you just hire somebody to do that?
I mean, you
I
can
didn't
hire
know
somebody.
that was a thing.
I think you can hire
Private
somebody to sit on
security.
top of your own house.
Yeah, private security.
I guess.
I'd love
I
a
don't know.
turret.
I don't know.
I want a turret. I just want Scud missiles. And we'll probably all get hit by a meteorite, you know, that hit McAllen this last week. Did you see that?
Yeah, pretty soon there'll be a train accident, you know.
Yeah.
That was close to, well, I mean, it was in the state I grew up in.
In Ohio. Okay, East Palestine.
Yes.
That's scary.
It is scary.
thing.
It's happening all over the place. It's just
Yeah.
wild. Well,
Nebraska.
Eileen, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Best of luck in your campaign. And again, facebook.com/Riverside Place 5, all letters, no numbers. And we appreciate you coming on.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen.
Are you listening? Damn.
All right, dudes and dudettes, that's a wrap for this episode of Dudes Talking Freedom. Special thanks to Eileen Riverside, candidate for Prosper, Texas School Board, Place 5. Vote on May 6th. Thanks for joining us. Please check out her website one more time. It's facebook.com/Riverside Place 5. For DTF, this is Jeremy.
This is Luke.
We'll see you next time.